Hi, I'm Nick Malwick, and welcome to An Evil Mind, a video crime blog from Xenobooks. This is my co-host, Andy. This week, Rex Stout and the Nero Wolfe novels. Rex Stout is born in 1886 in Indiana, grows up, goes in the Navy for a couple of years, comes out of the Navy, starts trying to make it as a writer. Does not meet with an enormous amount of success, but in the 1920s does actually make a lot of money because of royalties he gets from a banking system he invents for schools. So freed from the need to write for a living, he comes back, just trying to make sure he doesn't break anything. Free from the need to write for a living, Stout actually becomes a prolific and reasonably successful pulp author, though incidentally not one of the Black Mask or Dime Detective guys. His first Wolfe novel comes out in 1934. It's called Fer de Lance and establishes a character that he would write for the remainder of his life. He died in 1975 in his 90s with a truly impressive beard by that point. Incidentally, if you ever looked at any pictures of him, I don't have him up on the Wall of Fame here. Wolfe is one of the great eccentrics of crime fiction. He is a consulting detective in the manner that Sherlock Holmes starts as, but certainly not in the manner that Sherlock Holmes finishes as. One of Wolfe's things is that he will not leave his house voluntarily. It is only extraordinary circumstances that will drive him to go out in the world at all. We are led to believe that Wolfe's obsession with his creature comforts comes from periods of privation in his early life. Not much is known of Wolfe's early life, although it is established canonically that he was born in Montenegro in southeastern Europe, and that he was some form of a freelance espionage agent, both before, during, and after World War I. Canonically, he comes to the United States in 1930, becomes a naturalized citizen. Other than that, there's little dribs and drabs here. He may or may not have been a soldier during World War I for at least part of that time. That is not 100% nailed down. There are, almost as many fan theories about Wolfe as there are about Sherlock Holmes, and we might circle back around to those in a minute. But Wolfe's, his main assistant, the person who goes out in the world for him, is another private investigator named Archie Goodwin. Goodwin is everything that Wolfe is not. Wolfe is morbidly obese. He has elevated himself class-wise through various means, although that is his social and economic standing is always tenuous. Wolfe works as a private investigator only when he is forced to by financial need. He turns down cases a lot of the time that Archie has to, in some way, strong arm or inveigle him into taking. Archie is good with women. Wolfe is, frankly, a misogynist. He distrusts and dislikes women. He is not known to have any relations with them, intimate or otherwise, through the course of the books. Archie is involved with a variety of women, although he does seem to maintain an intimate, though not non-exclusive, relationship with a socialite over the course of the novels. And also, incidentally, neither Wolfe nor Goodwin age very much between 1934 and 1975. They're essentially frozen. Archie has to go out and fetch witnesses to come talk to Wolfe because Wolfe will not go out and talk to them himself. He stays holed up. He is an orchid grower of international renown. Wolfe is a gourmet, both as a consumer and he will frequently cook for himself, and even times is recognized as enough of an authority to cook for chefs. I believe there was a couple of different instances of that in the books. Although Wolfe does also have a personal cook and butler, and as well as an orchid grower that works for him full time, and both of them live on the premises as well. It is an all-male household. This gives rise to the usual sort of fan conjecture. I think we can dispense with that here. I don't think there's really any textual support for Archie or Wolfe being gay. Although that comes up as it has with Holmes, as it has with Philip Marlowe. So, they are employer and employee first. They become friends, obviously. So even if maybe only Archie would acknowledge it over the course of the book, they need each other as much as Holmes and Watson need each other. I can't really recommend a particular, good Wolfe book. You may as well start. Well, you don't even necessarily have to start at the beginning, because I will tell you the first 2-3 books of the Wolfe books are relatively lumpy until Stout figures out really what he's doing. I mean, all of the elements are there in the first few books. You could maybe start with, say, 4th, 5th, 6th one along. If you like it, then go circle back around and do the first few, but maybe give them until the late 30s to kind of iron out the details. One thing about Stout, this was not his only crime series. One was actually, he wrote a female private eye series concurrently with the Wolfe books that I think only last like 3 volumes. I've never read any of these. They're quite difficult to find. They were not successful, although Doll Bonner, who is the female private eye in these stories, eventually becomes a recurring character in the Wolfe books, because in addition to Archie, Wolfe also has a variety of other private eyes that Archie's the only guy he employs full time. He has, however, on an as needed basis, other investigators such as Orry Hatch and most notably Saul Panzer. If Archie didn't have Archie's job, Saul would have Archie's job. Archie even acknowledges Saul Panzer as being perhaps a better private detective than he is. And, Archie is two-fisted and gets into a certain amount of gunplay. But he's not really a hard-boiled private eye of the era. Not like the Black Mask guys, for example. And not like somebody like Race Williams, who we talked about a long time ago in this series. The Wolfe books straddle the line between the hard-boiled stories of the 1930s and 40s and the cozy mysteries, which is the sort of thing that you would associate with, the Lord Peter Wimsey stories, for example, or Miss Marple, or Hercule Poirot, or Ngaio Marsh's novels, that kind of thing. The British country house murder type stories, or the small village type. Except in this case, the village is New York, but Wolfe doesn't deal very often with the lower social classes. Most of his clients are very rich because Wolfe's rates are extraordinary, although occasionally he does waive them. He will take pro bono cases. He doesn't like to because, again, he's highly motivated by money, but he is also not without moral sense. Most of the criminals that Wolfe apprehends are rich people. Most of the victims are rich people. So he's dealing with a fictional New York that acknowledges the Great Depression and acknowledges World War II and does not seem to be particularly touched by either. World War II, like I said, was an important time in Stout's life. It was also an important time in Nero Wolfe's life. Archie, of course, after Pearl Harbor, rushes out to enlist. He is actually recruited out of the enlistment office. He's considered too good an investigator to go, be in the regular army. He ends up joining G2, which is what they called military army intelligence, during that time. Wolfe acts as an unpaid consultant to military intelligence during World War II. So they're extremely patriotic, and there becomes more of a counter-espionage tinge to the books in those years. But still also you're still dealing with who poisoned Mr. So-and-so, who owns the big company kind of stories. The Wolfe stories have the classic also gather all the suspects into one room and find out who the guilty guy is, and there's always the cops there. Wolfe has an antagonist, Inspector Kramer, who works for the NYPD, who is also an uneasy ally, but he dislikes Wolfe for what he considers Wolfe playing fast and loose with the rules and with the law that says that, you know, anything he uncovers in the course of an active homicide investigation, he's supposed to turn over to the cops. Wolfe, of course, does not. It's a story. The fictional private eye. If fictional private eyes did that in the murders they investigated, we wouldn't have books. We would just have them find something out, hand it over to the cops, and the cops tell them to buzz off. So, you know, Kramer has an assistant named Sergeant Stebbins. There's a variety of other antagonistic cops. You know, the guy Kramer works for is a jerk who, you know, just flat out hates him. Some of the district attorneys have extremely troubled relationships with Wolfe. So, you know, most of the violence tends to be off stage. It tends to be relatively bloodless. You know, I mean, like I said, there are a lot of poisonings. In real life, poisoning is an extremely horrible way to die. But, you know, in books and movies of these types, it tends to be relatively clean and sanitized. You know, just and people fall over and that sort of thing. So you're not getting a lot of, like I said, the Race Williams or Mickey Spillane type mayhem where somebody is, you know, getting shot and their brains are splashed all over the wall. So, you know, like I said, you don't dispense with the early books, but you maybe get a little ways along, circle back, and you know, Stout finds his feet with this series pretty early on. So I don't have a specific recommendation for this, but you know, give it a few and see what you think. But I highly recommend it overall. It stayed a very strong series all the way to the end. These, again, like Spencer, like Sherlock Holmes to an extent, these are hangout books where you're reading them partly for the mystery and partly because you like the characters and you like their interactions. So it's that kind of a thing for sure. You know, next week I haven't quite sorted out what we're doing. I got a couple of ideas. We're going to circle back to the past like with this. For a while again. We'll probably do some subgenre roundups. I do want, you know, speaking of those English cozy mysteries that I talked about, I do want to do something on those books coming up here. I want to do kind of a roundup of African American crime fiction. I want to talk about people like Chester Himes, for example, and others. Those are kind of waiting on me to complete some research. As always, if you like the video, please hit like, please hit subscribe, please, you know, look through the sales links that will be in the description. Please follow Xenobooks on social media. As always, thank everybody with their time. Appreciate you watching. It's really great to hear from people. If you got a question, you got a comment, leave them in the comments, or, you know, hit us up on Twitter. It's at Xenobooks, for crying out loud. And, you know, we're always looking forward to hear from people. Really glad for everybody's input, and we will see you next week. Thanks a lot. Bye.